Hello, happy Friday. Welcome again to LFG Live. Today is a continuation in our February series, which is our People in Leadership series. Today, February 20th, is Accountability Without Micromanaging. Just as a reminder, last month, January, was Foundations and Clarity, some foundations of business. This month is People in Leadership series. Next month, we're going to go into hiring and team structure. A lot of fun stuff. But again, today, accountability and micromanaging. And the funniest part of this team is that just this week, I was talking to Tina, who's now, due to a bunch of circumstances happening in our life, one of my business partners, which is an amazing thing to see. But we were talking about accountability versus micromanaging, especially in a creative environment where you want things to look and feel the way that you want them to look and feel, right? How do you do that without having your hands in the mix of everything? And there's a way. It's tough. It's a struggle. But there absolutely is a way to accomplish that, to make sure that your quality is where it should be, that the job is being done how you want, but you don't physically have to be the one doing it all the time. But first, let's start off the way I do every week. What tea am I drinking in this Friday afternoon? So recently I've had a bunch of bougie teas, right? Winter of Chelsea, some of the fun stuff behind me here. Today I have a basic Celestial Seasonings, or Celestial Seasoning, is that what it's called? Bengal Tiger Spice something. Bengal Spice, I think it's called. Very standard, inexpensive, but delicious tea my wife and I love to drink. So cheers. Oh, she just made that for me, so it's very hot. That's the tea I'll be drinking when we're done then, because it needs to cool off for a bit. So again, let's start talking about accountability without micromanaging. So today we're going to talk about the tension that pretty much every owner-operator feels, especially when they're the ones that started their business. And that's primarily who I work with, right? The owner-operator who's scaling or growing their business. You want to trust your people. A lot of times in these businesses, people are hiring on folks that are even in their circle of friends or family, right? So these are people that you trust, or the people that you hire when you only have a small handful of people in your rosters. These people tend to be very close with you, right? But you also don't want to get burned. So you want to trust, but you don't want to get burned. And what happens when leaders start to do this is they're suddenly checking on everything. They're looking at every document that comes out. They're redoing work constantly. They're asking for updates all the time. So team is working, and rather than just waiting for that deliverable because you trust when it's going to come, you're checking in on it all the time, wasting a ton of time. And the perception that a lot of these leaders get, that I've seen, is that they call this high standards. They say, well, I have a high standard of the output. I have a high standard of what I want to see put out from our organization or our company, so I have to check on it. In reality, it's not high standards. It's not even leadership. And if you look back at a couple of our sessions over the last month and a half, you'll see that I talk about this quite a bit in trusting our team. But it's really just anxiety. It's anxiety as your job title. That's all it is. This is anxious work. It's not scalable. It's not healthy. It's not creating a great environment. It's not creating a people-first environment for your team. And it's certainly, as we're going to go into in a moment, actually going to degrade the quality of what comes out, right? You can't personally, as you're scaling, be involved in every single thing that your company is doing. You just can't. We don't have a clone machine yet, so you can't do it all. What we need to make sure that we're doing is holding teams accountable without micromanaging them to be able to grow, setting the standards, tracking your outcomes, and letting your adult employees be adults. Let them do what they have to get done. So first, let's talk about accountability a bit. If you follow my social media, and hopefully you all do, I've posted quite a few times how I believe accountability is not a negative. Accountability means I believe in you. It means I believe that you can get this job done, and I believe that you can do what's expected of you. Because if I'm not going to hold you accountable, meaning exit you from the business, not trust you, not have faith in you, if I don't hold you accountable, it's because I don't think you can do it, right? If I hold you accountable, it's because I think you can do it. So the first part of accountability, when we look at it in the scope of what we're talking about today, which is accountability without micromanaging, is first hiring better than your best, hiring for the right fit. Anybody who's worked with me for any length of time knows that I cannot stand, and people get a sharp look across the room should they say it, but when people use phrases like, I need to hire a body, or I need to fill a seat, or I need to fill a role, no, you need to find a right fit employee for your business. When you do that, the accountability becomes so much easier, because you're not just putting a body in a seat. That body in the seat can have a different vision than you, different theories in business, different creative ideas than you. They can have all these things that just clash with your way of doing business. Now, I'm not saying differences are bad. Differences are actually great. I love working with people who see things differently than me, because it allows us to have multiple perspectives. But I'm saying really people who are from the core value of who they are the opposite of what you're trying to accomplish in a business, not going to work. So don't fill a seat. Don't hire a body. bring in somebody who's going to align in your business. It may take a little bit longer. You may need to hire somebody like me on to help you find that right fit, but that is ultimately so important. Spend a few more minutes, a few more days finding the right fit versus just rushing, and that helps the accountability part tremendously. So now you have the right people in the business. You have somebody who aligns with your mission, aligns with what you're trying to do, aligns with the type of business that you are. Now it's time to set those clear expectations. We talked about this in people, process, profit. We talked about this in people first leadership, and even in performance management, making sure expectations are clearly set. What does right look like? What does winning look like? And you'd be amazed how many businesses feel, or how many managers, leaders, CEOs, founders, owners feel that they've done this appropriately. But when you ask the team, they don't. They just don't. Even if it's a great leader, even if it's a great person that they love, very often they don't know what really right looks like. So one, setting those clear expectations, setting them on proper timelines. If you expect something by next Tuesday, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I need that by Tuesday. And you know what? When Tuesday rolls around, if you don't have it, that's an accountability conversation, right? Visible metrics. I am a huge component of scoreboards, KPIs, trackers, whatever your business wants to call it. That's how we measure success frequently. It's how we measure success often, but it's also how we're able to pivot if something's not going right. I don't like the reports at the end of the month. Yes, I need them. I need to look at them. I need to do, see what happened. I love the reports that come out throughout the month that allow me the opportunity to change what I'm doing to create success as we're going on throughout the month. So visible metrics for everybody. And then consistent follow through. Whatever we've agreed upon, whatever we say we're going to do, we are going to absolutely do. It's actually one of the core values here at LeMay Fusion Group that you can actually find on our website, but consistent follow through on what we're doing. So how does that differ? Accountability, which isn't just letting people do what they want and all that, accountability versus micromanaging. So micromanaging is controlling how things are done, even if it's not clear, right? So think about if I were to tell my 7-year-old son to go do the dishes. He's never done the dishes before. And he does the dishes and he does a terrible job. Well, and then I'm behind him the whole time yelling, hey, that's not clean. That's not how you do it. That's not how you clean that. You got to unscrew that. You got to clean that. You got to use the special thing for the straws. And if I'm just yelling at him the entire time I'm doing it, well, that's micromanaging. That's not teaching him. That's not setting clear expectations. That's not doing the right thing. That's micromanaging. And that's belittling and it's mean. And nobody likes that. It's a waste of the leader's time. And trust me, the employees hate it. Constant check-ins because you don't trust the system. As soon as I say this too, I think of one particular leader who I love and adore, worked with him for a little bit of time, not too long, but I really enjoyed him, but he did not have faith in the company's processes. And that was one of the things I was brought on board to help with. I came on board for a continuous improvement role. And you would see him constantly checking in. And it was because, and he was right, the systems weren't done yet. The systems weren't where they needed to be. And I saw the stress on him and I saw the stress that put on the people. And again, he was an amazing leader. People loved him. I haven't worked with him for over a year and I still love him. Great guy, but he had to do that constant check-in. It didn't help anything, right? It helped us isolate the fact that we needed to fix our systems, which we did. We hired some amazing folks to come in, fix the systems, fix broken processes, really rallied the team. And we did a fantastic job in fixing what needed to be fixed, but you could see the stress that caused him. You could see the stress that caused the team. So that constant check-in because you don't trust the system, again, micromanaging, not accountability. Another is moving the goalposts. We talked a moment ago about agreed timelines and visible metrics. Well, if I tell you that I need 100 widgets built by Tuesday, and then Tuesday rolls around, and I'm like, no, I needed 150 by Monday. So now you're wrong. That sounds preposterous when I phrase it that way. I get it. But there are leaders who consistently move those goalposts. I've experienced it myself with certain leaders who I would have a deadline on a report. I'm a data-centric person. Data drives behaviors, where I would commit to having a report on a certain day, and then 3 days sooner they would call and say, hey, we're going to have a meeting at my house tomorrow. Can you bring that report with you? And I'm like, well, I can. All right, I can work overnight. Or really late tonight. I can get a bunch of stuff done. Not going to be the same quality because I had planned it out when it was supposed to be done. So constantly moving those goalposts, of course, is going to create some animosity, but it's also going to create degraded quality of work because people are rushing things or, not doing things the right way. Another point of micromanaging too is helping when it's truly helping. When it is being a servant leadership is fantastic. It is, hey, do you need anything from me? Or, hey, you know what? I see you struggling. I see you fell behind because whatever circumstance that happened, whether personally or professionally. Is there anything that I can do? Can I be a resource to you to help you reach your goals? Fantastic. You're putting the ownership on them. The minute you remove their ownership. So, hey, Lauren, it looks like you're not going to hit that goal. Let me take this over real quick. Let's get this done. Now, in your head, you might be thinking, well, I'm helping them because before they were going to miss their goal. Now they're not going to because I'm helping them. But once you remove that ownership from them and you took over the project, micromanaging, again, not going to help the employee. You're going to get that one job done probably on time. Not going to help your leadership, not going to help the company overall, and it's certainly not going to help that employee. So the bottom line, when you look at accountability versus micromanagement, you can see that micromanagement is usually a symptom of missing clarity, missing systems, potentially sometimes the wrong people, right? The wrong people in the wrong seats. It's usually, believe it or not, the least one. It's the first one people go after because they like to kind of blame a person. And it does happen. But when I really look at most companies that I've worked with, it has been not the people, but it's been the processes. It's been the lack of clarity, the lack of SOPs, the lack of timelines, even the lack of reporting, the lack of a KPI dashboard, whatever measurables that you have. When people have clarity, they tend to have to micromanage. Now, I also think about it in the scope of a client I just talked to this week, or potential client I talked to this week. My wishful thinking, my positive vibes out into the world. But a potential client this week, and I was speaking to her about growth in her business. And one of the things that we spoke about was being able to be hands-off when you're so used to 100% being hands-on in a growth part of a business. And during that transition, she's not there yet, but during that transition, one of the hard things to adjust to is micromanaging, because you're used to 100% of the quality of that business, 100% of the quality assurance coming from you, physically coming from your hands and saying, I did this. Now you have to get used to teaching, coaching, training other folks to do the same thing. The hardest part for people usually is to lay off a little bit. Now, thankfully, this person was amazingly bright and was like, no, I'm ready for that. I've seen it happen in other businesses. I know exactly what I need to do. I need to not have my hands in the mix and micromanage. She understood that, but not everybody does. But yeah, so once we have that clarity, once we have the processes in place, once we have the scoreboard, the clearly defined roles, then the owner of the business, rather than having to really roll up their sleeves and be in the business as much, become the system that the business relies on fundamentally and foundationally versus in that day-to-day. So when we talk about how do we switch from micromanaging to accountability, again, first, what I would do is really do an evaluation of our teams, right? Are they the right fit? Doesn't mean they're a bad person. They can be the most amazing person in the world. But if you have, my wife, Lauren, as your accountant, your business is going to fail. You have me as your interior designer, your business is going to fail. Certain people are great at certain things, certain people are not. So do we have the right people in the right places? Once we know that, do we have the right processes in place? So when we look at the trust and how we build trust with these teams, the first, again, is competence. Can they do it? Are you hiring Daria for an interior designer? Or are you hiring Daria for HR, for recruiting, for systems, for data? Then you're going to win. So making sure you have the person that can do the jobs, that's the competence. The second is consistency. Can they do it repeatedly? Now, I might design a room nice once, but it's probably never going to happen again, right? So can they do it repeatedly? Is it a skill set that they have to be able to get this done? And communication. So these are the three foundations that we look at in the lane of trust when we're talking about, having the right people and holding them accountable. So competence, consistency, and the last is communication. And this is a tough one. And this is really one that comes from the leadership side is, will you have somebody on your team that is comfortable coming to you when something is wrong or something is off? And I'm not going to say that they still shouldn't be nervous, right? Nobody likes to fail or be behind or miss a deadline, right? But have you created an environment where your team can come to you and say, Daria, this is due by Tuesday. I'm struggling to hit that deadline because of XYZ. Here's what I've done to try to overcome it. I'm not sure if I'm going to hit that Tuesday. Can I please run this by you to see if there's anything you see that I can do differently or how we should handle this? Are they comfortable having that clear communication with you? And if they're not, make sure you're doing an evaluation kind of yourself and what you might be able to do a little bit differently. But it also could just be their anxiety, right? You could be the most amazing open communicator in the entire universe. Sometimes people just aren't comfortable, but we need to make sure that we have those three components of trust: competence, consistency, and communication. Now, the other side of that is I'm not just fluffy and fun and think that everything is going to be, unicorns and butterflies at all. No, we still need to track. We still need to make sure we're looking at things. I'm sure you've all heard inspect what you expect, right? These things are important because not only do we want to find the right people, but the right processes, but we also need to make sure that we're looking at these things. So tracking isn't not trusting people. It's saying simply that we need to lead this and we still need to make sure things align with our overall vision, right? But we need to be able to see the work without necessarily chasing that person. So I think of, for example, in one of the companies I worked with, I had somebody who did a ton of reporting for me. They were my data analytics person. I couldn't imagine having to hunt this person down every day and saying, where's my report on this? Where's my report on that? Right? No, I can't do that. We had a warehouse where all this stuff went. Different phases of the business, Power BI, all different things that I've used and implemented in the past. But those reports go to a spot so that I can just go in and see them, right? So I don't have to chase them. Now, thinking again to the story I told at the beginning, my new business partner, Tina, hers is on a more creative side of the business. So if she has folks that are creating things for her, whether it be web pages or designs, whatever it may be, she doesn't want to be in creating all of those things. But at the end of the day, what we deliver to those clients is dependent on her vision, and our vision. So while she's not doing and creating those, she still needs to see them before they go out. So again, that's that checklist, right? It's delivered here. We have a project for company ABC. It's due by Tuesday. It should be in there by Tuesday. Tina could log in on Tuesday, see if it's there, approve it, and move through the work process, right? So again, at that point, we are managing the outcomes, not hovering over the tasks. So she's not going in the middle of a graphic designer creating a new logo for somebody and going, I think we need to move this here and move this there. Not to say she's not going to give that advice at the end, for sure, but she's going to look at the outcome. She may, at that point in the outcome, I'm not saying she just has to give it a thumbs up because the employee thought that. She can positively, absolutely give the feedback at that point, but she can't hover over the individual tasks. So if you only trust and you don't track, that's when you're going to get those surprises. If you only track and you don't trust, you're going to get a bunch of employees who don't like you. So the goal is to have high standards in our business, but also high autonomy. We want to hire people who can do great things. I think a while back too, when we talk about autonomy, back in the days where we had our T-Mobile stores, one of the gentlemen that worked for another T-Mobile partner had come to me once, just chatting. I think we were at an event, and he said, Daria, when you guys were going to build, 24 stores in 24 months, people thought you guys were crazy, that, you were going to fail. That's such a high expense and high, investment and just so busy to open 24 stores in 24 months. And we actually wound up doing more than that, by the way. But he said, what was your secret all those years ago of the company, not mine, but the company's secrets of how you guys accomplished this and more than that, when people thought there was a high chance that you were going to fail. And I had to think about it for a few minutes because there were so many. And this, again, was a social engagement. I couldn't sit down and do an hour-long TED Talk on it. But I really had to summarize it as quickly as I could in this brief conversation. And I said, what I think the biggest thing was? The owners of that company hired amazing people and got out of their way. We were never bogged down by feeling like we were being just tracked on every single thing, right? And again, they wanted to see the outcome. We couldn't make big choices without running it past the ownership team, of course. But they didn't micromanage the processes. They let us work. They let us think. Which is such a logical thing to think about. But so many companies do not let their employees think. And again, that company was incredibly successful, sold for a lot of money. And I've made, most importantly, some amazing lifelong friends from being there. But certainly one of the biggest tricks that they had, not tricks, but skills, was really hiring great people and letting them do the job that they were hired for. So I always like to put in some examples, and I know I've given a few already today, of times where things like this worked well and times when things like this worked. So I did work with one partner in the past that said, when we were talking about accountability, said something to the effect of, I have to remind them 10 times. I have to remind them 10 times to do what they have to do. So I'm like, I need to observe. I need to see what's going on here. And I watched the owner spend, I do some time and motion studies. I love to do those because it really shows us where, from a capacity planning standpoint and all that, where our time is really going. I watched this owner spend 2 hours a day reminding people of the same things. And I was like, why on earth would we have to do this? Is the team lazy? It wasn't. It's not because the team was lazy. It was because the business didn't have a checklist. They didn't have an SOP. They didn't have a deadline. So if the employees are creating the priority list in their own head, they may say that this priority of project 2, I can push that out. I don't need that till Thursday. Meanwhile, the owner really thought it was going to be on Tuesday, but he never told them, right? So no SOP/checklist, no deadline. So there's no priority, or the priorities could be different amongst. No true owner of a project. So he constantly has to check in who's doing what, and no consequence. There was no deadline. There was no, hey, we really need to get this done. And I don't mean consequence like you're going to get fired necessarily. But what is the consequence of the business if we're not getting this done? What is the consequence to that client if we're not getting this done? So, for example, if we're supposed to put a job posting out because a new client needs to hire somebody, but what if we don't get the job posting out? Well, now they're not going to be able to service their clients. So I'm not understanding that consequence. So at that point, we have this highly skilled owner, this amazingly bright and brilliant owner who's built this amazing company, who is now an alarm clock. He has a reminder app. He is not actually an executive of the business. He is simply an admin going around reminding people of what they should do. Well, a great system in place would avoid all that. The other is, and this is one that really kind of crushes me, is the micromanaging, putting people in decision-making paralysis. If your team is afraid, or if your team doesn't know and they become robots, they are going to stop being free thinkers. Now, my perspective of business owner and somebody who's run on various levels, other people's businesses that they've owned, I hire people who can think. I hire people who are smart, who can do the job. I don't hire robots to just do exactly what I program in there, right? So micromanaging tends to teach people, don't decide what to do, ask the boss. The boss is going to tell you everything. The boss dictates everything, right? Or don't own it. This isn't your decision. Don't wait for approval. You got to wait. And I have worked with some businesses that were like that. And it was tough for me, really tough, because I'm used to being trusted and hired for the brain that I have, right? For the decision making, knowing full well I'm never going to make a bad decision for the business. I'm never going to make a decision that's going to harm or hurt anybody, right? But having to either just ask every little thing, not the big things. Again, if I want to go open a new site somewhere, if I want to go do these big things, for sure, that needs to be more of a board decision. But the tiny little things, like I want to change from this to that, or I really want to shuffle these roles around, or these responsibilities, or I want to create this SOP. I shouldn't have to wait for the boss. I shouldn't have to wait for approval every time, because then what happens when you're doing that is you have an environment that people can't think for themselves. They're afraid to, or they're taught not to. Then what happens? You have a boss that says, why can't people think for themselves? Why do they have to call me forever? My phone rings all day long with these employees asking me for help and what they should do next. Well, you've probably created that yourself. You've trained them not to think for themselves. You've trained them that you are the only person who can make a decision in the business. Don't allow that to happen. Not going to be good for your employees, not good for you, not good for the growth of your business. So when we think about how do we overcome the accountability versus the micromanaging, first really is understanding what right looks like and understanding what winning looks like, and making sure that's shared with the team. Make sure we understand our weekly outcomes, our weekly deadlines, weekly targets, whatever they may be, and then check-ins. I do have a lot of small business owners that as soon as I say a weekly check-in, they do the sigh, and they bring up is this going to be a meeting that could have been an email? Is this going to be a meeting that could have been a text? I'm not saying they have to. I've said this a few times during this LFG live series. It doesn't have to be a long 2, 3, 4 hour meeting. It could be a 15-minute check-in. If you're in person instead of remote, it could be stopping by their desk and saying, I'm going to go for a walk around the building real quick. Let's talk about what's on your plate. Quick 15-minute, 1 or 2 laps around your building. Done. What happened last week? What's stuck? Is there anything you need help with? Is there anything that's going really well that you want to share with me? Is there anything you do need a decision from me? Because then they're coming to you for it. It doesn't have to be long meetings. And I'm also not saying it can't be. If they're like, oof, boss, I might need an hour or 2 of your time. I have some really complex stuff. That's great too. That's what we were here to do as servant leaders and people first leaders, right? And then again, going along with the kind of the owners, the only one who can make a choice thing, which is a huge one for me, is they have to understand what they can decide on and what they can't. On one of the businesses I already spoke about today, I remember doing that exact thing with the leadership when I came in as the role I was in. I had 2 people directly above me in the building, and I remember having to go to them for the smallest thing, like it was like a bill credit for a client. And I am not willy-nilly with my bill credits by any means, but if they had a true issue or a true problem, I'm willing to help the client. Thankfully, the owners of the business were absolutely 1,000% client focused. They want to do the right thing by their clients all the time. But I remember every time I even had the smallest bit of a credit that was completely rational and reasonable, I had to go to the leadership team, and I felt like I was bothering them, right? They had bigger things to worry about. So I asked them, I was like, hey, can we come up with something that says maybe to a certain value, or maybe to a certain value per client or a certain value per month, whatever you want it to be, is there a threshold? Because at that point I was leading the customer service team. Is there a threshold where I don't have to come to you for this? Not that I don't want to, I don't mind having a conversation with you, but I don't want to bug you for this kind of stuff where it really should be on my level. And they were grateful to do that. They created an outline of here's what you can do on your own without approval. Here are the things that really need to have the director or the shop manager's approval on because it was of a certain value, and it was fine. Saved so much problems, so much issues, so much time, and allowed my customer service team to be able to service the customer in a much faster way rather than saying, well, I'm going to have to put you on hold or I'm going to have to disconnect with you now. I'll call you back later, which just wastes time when you look at capacity planning for a call center. We were able to say, okay, this is within my threshold of crediting and get it done right away. So not only did it keep the client happier, kept the employee happier, the manager wasn't bothered as much, and we got to resolve issues a heck of a lot quicker. So decide who can do what alone, decide when they need input, decide when they need approval. Once those are streamlined, and again, there's going to be some wiggle here and there as you grow through that, you're going to stop yourself as the leader from being the bottleneck in decision making. So a few takeaways for today. Really think about and be honest with yourself, right? Because that's what we're all here to do. Be honest about how we can help our business and help our teams. Where do you hover the most? Is it customer issues? Is it money? Is it quality of business? Is it sales? Where do you really hover the most? And let's figure out how we can empower your teams to be able to accomplish what they need to do. Second, important, do you have a scorecard, KPI scorecard? And forget the idea that, when they have this, people are going to think it's negative and that's all in how you handle it. When you create a scorecard or a KPI tracker, whatever you want to call it, people get excited about it as long as you're using it the right way, but it helps them know what the North Star is. It helps them know what right looks like, so it's necessary. And the last is, what is one decision you're still holding that somebody else in your team can own? Is there anything today that people have to call you or you have to do that you think you can give to somebody else? Challenge you all to find that, because I think you can. I think there's a lot of things that we can let go of that we probably just do because we are just used to it. We're just used to getting it done. So again, if you need help with any of these things, certainly, LeMay Fusion Group is here to help. I love data. You hear me talk a lot about being a people first leader and a people person, and I absolutely am. But I mentioned it earlier. I think data fuels the behaviors. Data allows me to know where I need to support the teams and where I need to move forward. So when we talk about accountability, making sure we have clear guidelines, clear understanding, clear tracking, clear KPIs, and the right people in those seats. But we are hiring better than best and finding the right fit for our company. So that is it for today, team. Next week let me check our agenda. Next week is our last in our People and Leadership series, Leadership Mistakes That Cost You Money. Oh, that's going to be a fun one. And then going into March, hiring and team structure. That is a big one, and one that people are oftentimes pretty nervous about, or it's seems a little overbearing, but I am absolutely here to help. But for today, team, finish your drink, take a deep breath, and go lead with intention today. Thanks so much, everyone.